Alright, so thanks for showing up. This video is about someone that is getting interested in PRS or NRL style matches. Some of the gear you're going to need just to get started, and this is before you go to a match. This video will help you learn some of the things you're really going to want to know ahead of time before the match starts. So hopefully you guys enjoy. Take care. See you soon. Hey you guys, welcome back to Isyour6covered. Appreciate you showing up. Today we're going to redo an old video that did pretty well, but I want to give some updated information, a little more knowledge, and make it kind of a series for those of you that are interested in PRS, NRL, rimfire style shooting, the things before you even get to a match. Hopefully this video helps you guys, and if it does, definitely leave some comments down below and also maybe hit the subscribe button. Before signing up for an NRL PRS style match, there's quite a few things that we want to do in order to help you get to the match and know all that information and kind of feel like you're not sitting there sinking in quicksand. First one is to have a rifle. You're going to want a base rifle, a production rifle, basically something that's kind of a bone stocky rifle that you would get out of your normal box store, like a Tikka, a Ruger, a CZ, so on, a Savage, blah, 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 blah. Figure out what you want, but you're basically looking for preferably a bolt action rifle. Some people are running semi-autos, and we'll get into some of that as we move on. So you're gonna want a magnified optic on top of your rifle, somewhere in between like 4 power to 27, somewhere in there you're not gonna want like a 1 to 10. You won't have enough magnification to see some of those small targets. And you don't need to get super crazy, because most of the time we're shooting around 12 power is what probably the average is. But you're gonna want an adjustable turret. So turrets that you can turn from the outside to whether it's wind or whether it's elevation. You need something that you can easily turn the turrets for the next distance for that target. Some of the things you're going to want to think about too is there's two different types of scopes that they come in. You got a mil radian and you have an MOA. It's just a different way of measuring. At the end of the day, if you're going to shoot NRL PRS style shooting, most shooters will be shooting mil radian. So the communication between you and your fellow shooters is going to be a little better, because there won't need to be any conversions from MOA to mil. If you say, I had to hold 2/10 left, or if they said that, you would in turn know 2/10 will work, because you guys are both talking the same language. Another thing you're gonna want with your rifle is 2 magazines. This is kind of a minimum. Some people have 5, some people have some backups or whatever the case is, but for the most part, you just need 2 magazines. Some 2 10-round magazines is preferred, and if you have the ability, a 12-round magazine is even better. Reason being, sometimes the match directors will have a stage where you may need to shoot 10 to 12 rounds. So if you're going to shoot 10 rounds, you'll be fine with the 10-round magazine. But if you need to shoot, say, 12 rounds on that stage, you either, 1, need to change your magazine, which does burn up some time, and 2, if you do have a 12-round magazine, it'll be a little less stuff you got to worry about. All right, so when you're looking for a rifle, most people are shooting a bolt action rifle. I would say a good majority of people are shooting a bolt action rifle. Not to say that you can't shoot a semi-auto. The rules will change a little bit. Instead of having the bolt back, you will need to engage the safety, notify the RO that you're moving and that you're on safe. Another thing is your reticle. Depending on what type of reticle you have, it's going to dictate how much information is inside of that reticle that can help you or hinder you in trying to, 1, spot your hits or misses, and 2, giving you good data to figure out how much more or less you need to hold in the reticle. So depending on the reticle, so you're going to have either a very simplistic crosshairs, or you might have a lot of stuff inside of that reticle. There's bonuses to having more information than not, especially if you need to do a holdover stage where you're not able to dial because that's set up as the match director has set it up for the course of fire. But something to think about is having that information in there. I prefer a 2/10 going across, so every 2/10 down the reticle, I have the ability to not guess when it's some of the scopes you'll come in contact with will be like every 1/2 mil. That makes it more difficult when you have to hold somewhere in between. It's kind of a guessing game. Now when it comes to scope bases, or how much elevation your reticle has depending on how far you're going to shoot, let's say you're going to shoot NRL X or PRS style rimfire shooting and you need to shoot out to 300 yards is kind of the distance. 350 is kind of your farthest. Sometimes you'll see 500, but you're going to want to figure out how much MOA in your base you're going to need for your rifle. And yeah, it's MOA when it comes to the base. Most people are around the 40 MOAs. Some people will do 50, some very slim will do 60, a lot of people will do 30, but that's something you're going to need to look at. But the average in most probably is 40 MOAs between the base of the rifle and whatever is in the scope rings or mount. So some of the key things if you're just getting started is to stay within that base or production classification. But there is going to be some restrictions when it comes to that. And some of those restrictions are cost of money. So there's a lot of things like you can't mess with triggers, you can't change out chassis, you can't do, so there's some rules involved in that. Now open class is something different. You can run pretty much whatever you want, as heavy as you want, any triggers, all that kind of stuff. Where production, you're limited by price. So the price, depending on when you watch this video, could be any amount, and those do fluctuate throughout the years as the rules change and as newer rifle companies are bringing in different style rifles. But for the most part, you'll just need to go to PRS and the NRL website and look under the rules for that. Some of the things you're going to need to know before heading to a match, and this is kind of the data, and we'll talk a little bit about practice and all that kind of stuff. But you're going to need to know DOPE. And what DOPE means is data on previous engagements. So that's kind of the acronym. What that means is you're going to need to know your ballistics of the bullet that you're using. And we'll get into some of the brands that you may or may not want to use and the reasons why you may and may not want to use it. All right, so you're going to need to know the ballistics of your bullet. So when you practice and the distance is 100 yards, you need to know what to dial in your reticle. So before we go and do that, we're going to want a really good zero at 50 yards. I would say a really good majority of most people in most ranges when you go to the match is set up for a 50-yard zero. So have a really good 50-yard zero. Know what your rifle's gonna do at 50 yards. And then we're going to talk about the reasons why you need to know the ballistics of your rifle. So there's two options, and there's other options as well, but two good options that you see a lot of shooters using is Straylock. It's an app on your phone. Straylock Pro. It's kind of like 14 to 20 bucks for this app, but it's something that is definitely going to be important. Is you can either get Straylock Pro or you can get a Kestrel, which is basically its own machine that'll tell you after you put in all the data. You can tell it 212 yards and it'll tell you what you should dial in your reticle, and you should be good to go. But it takes into account the environmentals, how hot, how thick the air is, the elevation that you're at, and all these different things, and does also calculate wind. So if you're going to shoot an NRL match, there's kind of two differences. There's an NRL and then there's NRL X. Now NRL, for the most part, for a good rule of thumb, is basically out to 100 yards, and NRL X is basically, depending on which options they call it, you might get out to 350 yards, whatever the case is, maybe a little bit more, but for the most part, your NRL is 100 and in. and your NRL X, let's just call it 350 and in. Precision Rifle Series, the Rimfire Series version, they've gone out to 500 yards, but for the most part it's like 350-ish, 380 and in. But you're going to want to know that information, or at least have a ballistic calculator of some sort like we talked about earlier that can help assist you in figuring out what your hold should be. All right, so when we're talking about ballistics, we're talking about ammunition, how it flies through the air, and which one works great, doesn't work as good. Some of the things you're going to see most shooters using is something that is subsonic ammo. All right, so ammo selection. This is kind of a crazy one. There's so many different things out there that you can purchase. Everything from these big bucket of bullets, basically 22 long rifle bullets, to big packages of just loose ammunition inside of a little box. Those are kind of your bulk ammo. Those are usually supersonic ammo, and we're not looking for that. We're looking for subsonic ammo. And the reason being is that in flight, you got less to deal with. It's already leaving the barrel subsonic, so you don't have to worry about it going from supersonic back into subsonic and trying to figure that out. So usually, most of the time, you will find that that is going to help with accuracy. It's going to be more consistent and should be a little more accurate when it comes to that. So we're going to look for ammo. Now, some of the things looking for ammo, I will say you're going to see most people out there with either some type of Lapua ammo or some Ely ammo. Now, Ely and Lapua make different grades of ammunition, so depending on what your price range that you're in will dictate what kind of ammunition you get. So the higher end ammunition is going to shoot a little bit more consistent, and that's kind of what we're looking for, is consistency when it comes to standard deviation. So standard deviation is, as the bullet's going, say it's 1070, then all of a sudden it's 1100, and then it's 1000. That's a huge difference in standard deviation. So as that bullet's going, even though it's the same, you're aiming in the same spot, the ones that are headed faster are going to hit higher because they're not falling as fast, and then the ones that are less are going to hit low. So you're going to have a kind of a long oval group per se. So what we're looking for is something that has a tight standard deviation. So if you can find a box of ammo or a case of ammo that has a very low standard deviation, it's going to keep that group shrunk, because you're not having one that's shooting a lot faster or a lot slower at the bottom. They're going to be better grouped. So that's kind of what you're looking for. So it doesn't matter if it's Ely, it doesn't matter if it's Lapua or SK or any of that others. It's a matter of trying to find the best standard deviation that won't break the bank. Now, with that said, ammunition, if you have a buddy's rifle and his ammo works really well, there's definitely no guarantees that it'll work well in your rifle. Nor even if you have two of the exact same rifles that were built on the exact same day, there's nothing that says that that one ammunition is going to work great for both of those. So each rifle is kind of, you have to tune or at least test to that ammunition that you're going to use. So now that you've purchased a good ammo or a decent ammo or something that doesn't break the bank but is pretty decent, hopefully it has a low standard deviation, is now you want to collect good data. So now you go out to the range, you get your rifle zeroed at 50 yards, and then now that you have downloaded, say, Straylock Pro, or you went and picked up a Kestrel, or maybe you're borrowing one of a buddy's, you set up your profile. Now it's going to start telling you stuff. So let's say now we want to shoot to 100 yards. I would say a lot of the competitors shooting a mil reticle, they'll be around 1.6. Some people's bullets are shooting slower, some are faster, but right around in there, it should be like 1.5 to 1.8-ish, depending on temperature and environmentals, of course. But that's kind of the standard. So most people will be in that same type of ballpark. So if all of a sudden you're shooting 3.0 and everybody else is shooting 1.7, there's probably some error within there. So that might be something you want to check. And that's another reason shooting the same style scope, being mils over MOA, for this style shooting is going to help, because you can say, hey Fred, what's your dope for this distance? And he may say 125, or 1.5 and 2.8, and then you're looking at yours and it's completely different. Might want to double check everything and make sure everything's up to par. So things you want to have prior to the match: you're going to need a bipod of some sort. You're going to need hopefully a way that it can go on and come off decently quickly, because you'll be under the clock. So if you have the ability to maybe get one that you can attach to some type of Picatinny rail or Arca rail, that's going to be a little bit nicer, because then you can take it on and off depending on the stage. If it's one where you need a screwdriver, that's going to be a little slow and maybe hamper you in some of the stages where you got to go from, say, prone to now you got to go to some style barricade, but your bipod may be in the way. So something to think about. A rear bag. So when you're shooting prone, you're going to want some type of support bag in the rear, so you can either raise or lower the rear of your stock in order to get a nice good group, especially when you're zeroing, but also when you're using it in a match. I would say until you have a chance to borrow some gear from people when you go to your first match, just utilize some type of sock or some type of bag that you made with some type of rice or something in it in order to utilize it as your rear bag. And the reason why I say this is because there is a lot of different bags out there, and each person has their own personal preference when it comes to a bag. So I know Armageddon makes bags, Weebad makes bags, and so on and so on and so on. There's just hundreds of different bags out there. The thing is get a chance to borrow and try out these bags when you go to the match, because this will help you to figure out which one you want to purchase, instead of buying something and then figuring out that's not what you really like. You'll save yourself some money in the long run. The people in the shooting community are very helpful and want to help you, and if you just simply ask, may I borrow your bag, to try it out, they're going to be more than willing to want to help you. So at the end of the day, don't buy a bunch of stuff that you see online. It's probably not what you're looking for. Try stuff out before you go out and purchase. It'll save you a lot of time and a lot of money. Things and ways to prepare for your first match. YouTube videos. There's a lot of different shooting videos out there, and these videos will have hopefully some good information. So when you're watching match footage, you'll be able to see some of the barricade style things we have to do at the match. It'll give you an idea of how to practice ahead of time before the match. And then of course, always talk to some fellow shooters if you know them. Get in some of these Facebook forums. There's a lot out there depending on what location you are in the United States or wherever you may be in the world. And these will help to not only connect you with new shooters, but will also, they'll have some good information hopefully that you can utilize before you start your journey down your first match. You got your gear, you got some makeshift bags, and now you got your ammo, and now we need to go practice. As we practice, we figure out, we break everything into tiny little steps. So at first may be, okay, I'm just gonna shoot one shot at the first position, and I'll give you 11 seconds, say. So go ahead and continue doing that a couple times. Get into that rhythm of getting into position, putting your bag down, putting your rifle on there, making sure your rifle is level, finding the target, and then closing the bolt, and then making a nice clean pull of the trigger. And now we have an impact. Now that's working, right? Let's continue on and let's do that. Now we're gonna go to 2 shots, and we're just gonna keep breaking that down until we get to 10. So now that we have figured out, basically what we're figuring out is We know how to put the bag down correctly. We know how to put the rifle into the bag correctly. We know how to get behind the rifle correctly to be as stable as we can. And now we found the target in a pretty quick manner. And we closed the bolt nice and smooth so we didn't lose the target in the reticle. And then we go ahead and pull the trigger. Boom. Now we're going to transition. I'm going to lift the rifle up with the bolt back. I'm going to grab the bag, I'm going to put it on position 2, and I'm going to go ahead and do that again, and just keep working your way down until you can get under the 2 minutes or 90 seconds, depending on where you're located. Those are some of the things that will help you. Some of the other things that will help you is having 5 1-inch pasties on a target at X distance. Anything, it doesn't have to be far. Let's call it 65 yards. 65 yards. And now I'm just going to shoot target. This first target over here, I'm going to shoot in this position only. The next target, I'm going to shoot in this position only, from different heights as you move up. So let's just say the first one's standing. I'm going to shoot 2 at standing, no time. And then I'm going to go down to the lower position and I'm going to shoot 2 and keep doing that. What I'm trying to do is make sure that the bullet stays within the 1-inch pasty. And then I know that I'm doing pretty well. If you got your first position, let's say standing is pretty, you got a pretty good group around the pasty, but it's not in there. And as you go down to, let's say, prone on the 5th position, and now you're shooting really tight groups, prone. You know that as you go up, you're a little less stable. Figure out which one's your worst few, and then practice those the most. Some of the things that we need to practice is kind of time management. Most of the time, we're gonna have to shoot 10 shots. Sometimes it'll be less, sometimes it'll be more. For now, just think of 10 shots, and you need to do it depending on what you're shooting, either in 90 seconds or 2 minutes. So obviously, let's start off slow. We'll give you a complete 2 minutes, and then depending on where you really live, some places you'll have to do the 90 seconds. But if you at least practice with some type of time built into what you need to do, you can get an idea as you transition from position to position utilizing the target. So let's say we just make this easy and we go from one target at X amount of distance, let's say 85 yards, and let's just call it a 2-inch circle, but we need to shoot twice from 5 different positions. We're going to want to practice this before we run out of time. You can utilize all of the 2 minutes, but you don't want to waste time going from movement to movement. So what we're trying to do is you want to build speed. Some of the things you can do is at 50 yards, you can do a 1-inch pasty target. And you shoot those as fast as you can within the 2 minutes. And utilize the 2 minutes. As long as you finish right before the 2 minutes, you don't get penalized. Now there is time stages where you have to do X amount of stuff, and the faster you shoot it will help you if there's a tie. Let's not worry about that. That's the least important thing we need to worry about right now. What we're trying to worry about is impacts and the management of time. So we're going to stand away from the target, rifle pointed in the air, the bolt will be back, mag in, and you're just going to either have maybe your buddy on a phone hit the timer button and he'll say engage, and then you'll go ahead and get into each position and you'll take 2 shots from 5 different positions, and hopefully you're hitting the target. If not, slow down, make sure you got a nice stable position, and then progress. So as you progress, you will start hitting more targets and not timing out. So let's say you go the first time and you shoot and you hit 3 times and you only got off, say, 6 shots. So right now you're at 50% hit factor and you didn't finish out 10 shots. So first thing you want to do is you want to hit the target. So even go slower. Slow down, make sure your hits are nice, make sure your rifle is level. A lot of people will run a level on their rifle because it is very important, especially the farther out you get. So if your rifle's canted like this, the bullet's going to kind of go like that. So you may had held perfectly, you didn't flinch, you didn't move, you didn't do anything, but because your rifle was canted, you basically sent that off into the right. Or for you, it'd probably be the left, looking at me. So that's important. So, and that'll definitely help. So for part one, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I'm gonna add some more stuff and we'll get back to you guys. Hopefully you, if you haven't yet, we're gonna talk about on the next video, we're gonna talk about how to sign up for a match, some of the things you need to do prior to a match, and get down into the weeds of the nitty gritty. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Take care. See you on the next one. Like, share, and subscribe.